So can everyone hear? Good. So be nice just to have a minute together, and just for you to think about what does it mean, self-trust. And then you can see if what I share and what you're thinking aligns, or so it's quite a big topic, isn't it? Building self-trust. And I guess the opposite of that is living with self-doubt. So have any of you ever doubted yourself? Anyone never doubted themselves? So we're all in the same company, which is good. So on reflecting on this topic, if I go back 30 years, because I've been studying here over 30 years, about 31 years with the Brahma Kumaris, and if I go back to the day before, the day before I came to the Brahma Kumaris, probably full of low self-esteem, although I was functioning. I didn't actually realize I was full of low self-esteem, but definitely now I understand I was full of low self-esteem and doubted myself a lot. I'm looking back, I remember wanting to get reassurance. Was I doing the right thing? Did I look all right? All this kind of thing. So it's been quite a journey to building self-trust, and I think it's not an overnight thing. And first thing I would say is, from my own experience, and that's all I can share from, is that the more you move into your own truth, the more you'll trust yourself. And when you're misaligned with your truth, that and the repercussions of that, you start to doubt yourself. So if we could make an acronym of the word trust, I think the first one has to be truth. But what is truth? You know, that's a big topic, isn't it? So what I've understood from learning here, and my own experience tells me this, is that the truth about everyone is the same. Because truth has to be the same for everyone, doesn't it? It has to be, you know, can you have half-truths? Well, you can, but if it's a half-truth, you know it's not quite there. So my experience and understanding says that the truth about everyone is that innately they are good, beautiful. And what we study here is that at your absolute core, if you go behind all the thoughts and all the feelings and the traumas and the wounds and all the things that have gone on, and you went back to your innocent, that place of you that was innocent, it would be really a peaceful place and a loving place and a joyful place. But we all know that on the journey of life, we've got influenced by things, we've got disturbed by things, we've been traumatized by things, we have fears about things. And so often we're operating not from our truth, but from a layer. So if you see like a certain circle, and at the absolute center point of that circle, let's say that the center point of that circle is you, and that's the true you. But of course, all those experiences and all the thoughts that you've had about yourself and all the thoughts you've had about others, and also what you've taken on board from others, your school system, your family, whatever, has created layers. And much of the time we're living from our layers, not from our truth. And because we're living from a layer which isn't the ultimate truth, and most of those layers can change, they're subject to change. So, for example, a layer may be, I got on a career path and I went up the career ladder. And now I'm sitting in quite a good position in that career ladder, and it's bringing in very good money and very good things, and my identity may be that I am that one, the engineer, the doctor, the surgeon, the teacher, the headmistress, whatever. And I could live from that identity. That's my main identity. But of course that can change. You all know these things can change. So when we're looking at truth, we've got to look for something that's unchanging. So even your thoughts change, your personality changes. So there's got to be something even deeper than that. So in this school, this school here, we're learning to go deep, 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 deep inside and take time to explore the absolute part of us that hasn't been affected by all those layers. And that's why they sometimes say deep work, right? Have you heard that expression? Oh, I've got to do some deep work. What does that mean? It means you've got to go almost back to your origins before you got influenced, before you got hurt, before you started to blame someone else for your experience. And so what we're studying here, and what I've been engaged in for the last 30 plus years, is whenever I can, to take time out to almost, I would say, bypass the layers. I know they're there. They operate. But to bypass them for a short period of time, maybe it's a minute, 2 minutes, and imagine myself free of all of that. And what starts to happen as you start to access it, believe in it, and I guess ultimately trust it, you will operate differently in the world. But I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do because you're up against your own self-doubt. So let's just imagine there was this big game going on. And there's 2 players in this game. And they're operating inside each one of us. And one side is powerful thoughts. And the other side is weak thoughts. And the whole game is, can your powerful thoughts win over your weak thoughts? That's the game. And everyone in the world is playing the same game, but maybe they don't know the game. So you imagine you come to a game, and there's other people who've been playing the game for a while, and you come in, you don't quite know the rules. So you have to kind of watch them and whatever, and you try to work out the rules, and then you say, look, let's stop here. Please tell me the rules. Because you want to play, right? So then someone takes the time to tell you the rules of the game, then you can start playing. And I feel that is what this school has done to me. 30 plus years ago, I felt I was looking for this guidebook. I remember saying it to myself, I need a guidebook for life. I don't know what I'm meant to be doing. I knew I was meant to be doing something, but, I just didn't know what it was. And so, if you, in any game, if you know the rules and you practice the game, you're going to get better at it. You may start off in a game and you may not be that good at it, but if you practice it, same like anything, an instrument, a hobby, a sport, if you practice it, you're going to get better at it. You know, even a few years ago, I broke my arm. I was traveling in America, the worst place you want to break your arm, right? But luckily, I had quite good insurance. And it was really interesting because the whole process is that actually the bone mends relatively quickly. You know, when you put the cast on the bone, but because I was traveling, they didn't put a cast on straight away. They wanted me to come back to England and put the cast on. I don't really understand the logic of that, but so I had this huge thing where I couldn't bend my fingers. Whereas when you've got a cast on, you can usually bend your fingers. So what happened is when I came back and put the cast on, the cast was on, that's fine, the bones mended really quickly. But the pain was getting because this has become stiff. That's the hard bit, when you have to start moving your hand again and get it going. I don't know if any of you've had a broken... It's not the bone mending that's the pain, it's getting this going. And that's a bit what's happened to us. We've become a bit frozen in a certain idea about ourselves. So we're kind of like stiff. And now, what spirituality is a bit like they give you those kind of dough things. It's, easy, then a bit more difficult, and then you've got that really firm one that's really hard. And you've got spirituality is trying to make you move that muscle in here, the muscle of the mind, the muscle of, your discernment, your habits. It's trying to soften it all up, because as it softens, as those layers soften, then it's easier to get to the truth. So, are you happy with this game? This whole game, you happy with it? Because who does it depend on? Who does this game depend on? You. You are the player in your own game. So in this game of the subject of building self-trust, you're going to have thoughts that empower your trust in yourself. So what you're going to be up against is any thought that disempowers you, or any thought that invokes low self-esteem, or any thought that creates a doubt in yourself. So the way that we predominantly lean is to our default. And that's why it's easier. To bring out the empowerment takes more effort, because we're not used to thinking in an empowered way. Did anyone teach you at school how to think in an empowered way? I certainly didn't get an education in that. We all wish we had, didn't we? People come to, learn things here, and they say, "Can you teach my children? Can you?" Because we know that, the society hasn't helped us out. If anything, the way it's set up has completely disempowered us. But we didn't know. We didn't know. The whole system is set up very competitively, which is a disempowering process straight away. And the system, since the Industrial Revolution, has really to create workers. Majority are workers. Few are leaders, most are workers. So the whole system is being a very disempowering one. Let alone about different genders and all that thing as well. But the whole way is set up. So that means you can't leave it to anyone else. If you want to walk through the world in an empowered state, you have to create some empowered thoughts. So my first area is about how much am I aligned with truth. So in this university, some of you know this, some of you maybe don't know it. One is to hear it, the other is to live it. It's very different to hear it, first level, live it, high level, right? So here we see ourselves as consciousness, as awareness. You can call it spiritual being, you can call it soul, you can call it different name, true I, but ultimately you are consciousness and you inhabit a body. So you're not the body. So when we look at the words human being, the body is included in the human. It allows you, the body allows you to have a human experience. But you are that being. We see it as sits here, and you've seen people wear those little tillaks. You've seen them? Indian women wear tillaks. So that's a reminder where the soul sits. And because you are present in the body, everything happens. The moment that you depart from the body, nothing can happen. And just in this last year, I've witnessed two beings pass. And it's fascinating if you understand it. If you understand what is actually happening in front of you, it's absolutely fascinating. Because, we're sitting here and every so often we blink. We're sitting up. But we forget all the time that we're able to do that because the being is present. Once you, the being, leaves this body, someone else will have to close your eyes. Isn't that just incredible? Someone else will have to put your chin up if your mouth's open. Someone else will lay your hands. The body can't do anything without that being present. But we so forget. And we put, the way that society is so structured is the focus is on the human experience. But what we really want, and I'm sure if you ask anyone and keep asking the question, what do you really want in life? Everyone wants to feel peaceful, they want to feel safe, they want to experience love, and they want happiness. The world over. They may be doing bizarre things to get that experience, but that's what everyone wants. But those are all states of being. Peace is a state of being, love is a state of being, happiness is a state of being. And yet we're trying to find them in the human experience. So what I've learned over time is it's already within, but it's buried. You might be able to access one of those more easily than the other. So some people are quite loving naturally. Some people are more jolly naturally. Some are more kind of peaceful and silent naturally. But to have the whole spectrum. So, and because of the wounds that we carry can start when you're really young. I mean, in psychology they say between 0 and 5. Sometimes they're a bit more generous, 0 and 7. Your personality is already formed. That your leaning in life is you're already on a trajectory from quite early on. And that gets compounded by different experience. In fact, your trajectory will probably attract the experiences to validate for yourself your trajectory. So it's not an easy game to play. Because you need a lot of clarity, you need a lot of wisdom, and you need a lot of strength. Because when that weak thought arises, you need to be able to say no. But that's the default. So we're in kind of a situation where we want to be positive, we want to be happy, we want to be loving, we want to be peaceful and calm, but our default is something else. And a lot of that default is coming from deep within the subconscious. So, but as more and more you keep going, things start to shift, maybe little by little. Suddenly you take time out and you work to get that experience of yourself, almost the one behind the thinking. Because the thinking predominantly is about the human experience. And that's a real mixture. There's some good bits, there's some not good bits. But behind that thinking mind is your peace. It's like there, like a backdrop. But if your thoughts are always out there about what you've got to do and who you've got to see and what that person said and what that person did and what they didn't do, and you watch the news and what's happening in the world, and if your thoughts are predominantly about the human experience, then you're not going to be able to experience the being experience. It's like your thoughts are going that way. To experience the being experience, your thoughts have to kind of come back in and think about deeper questions like, who am I really? And why am I feeling these things? And what's going on in here? And what can I start doing to bring some change in myself? But, the world is always pulling you out. So you have to learn to be in the world, but not to always be pulled out. To almost be the observer of your thinking, or the observer of what you're experiencing while everything's going on. So, so I think if the journey isn't to access the truth about yourself, I think self-trust is going to be quite far away. You'll always be doubting yourself. Because if you're living from your layers, it's not your truth, so it's going to always be causing disturbance. So the next area I was thinking about in this topic is respect, self-respect. So first you have to know what's true about yourself, and then you have to start respecting that and giving yourself encouragement to experience that. To respect yourself not based on, the body you're in, the roles you play, the people you know, where you live, what you do. And to not respect yourself based on what you do is quite a hard one, isn't it? Because, and often they use that phrase, isn't it? We're not human beings anymore, we're humans doing. And so we've taken a lot of our respect from what we've been doing. And now it's a kind of shift to, it's not so important what you're doing, it's what you're experiencing while you're doing it. So example, even washing the dishes. Even if you have to load a dishwasher or it's by hand. So the act, the doing, the human bit is washing the dishes. The being bit is, am I doing it calmly? Am I having the experience of calmness while I'm doing it? Enthusiasm. Am I enthusiastically washing the dishes? I mean, it sounds a bit bizarre, isn't it? But that's the being bit. It's the qualities that are the being bit. So in order to start trusting yourself, the inner has to start matching or start coming into the outer. Because if our life is based on just what we do, sometimes it will be successful, sometimes it won't. But if you're respecting yourself based on that true expression of the self, it really is immaterial what you're doing. If you're feeling jolly, it won't matter if you have to clean out a drain. But if it's all become about, I've got to clean out the drain, you might be completely miserable doing it. So what we're learning here is to get a kind of an energy flow that's going, that isn't about this coming in, it's about that going out. So if we look at these core qualities, there's more, but if we look at peace, love, happiness. So Peace is the inner quality. We've all got it. Just the fact that we're beings, we all have that. We may not be experiencing it, but we all have it. So that when that gets expressed, it becomes calmness and patience and tolerance, quietness, tranquility, serenity. Love is the inner quality. When that's expressed, it comes out as kindness, compassion, respect for others, generosity, benevolence. Joy comes out as happiness, enthusiasm, motivation, friendliness, jolly, humor. So when we're expressing that, we are expressing from our being. So the role you play in life is not so important. And I learned this because many, many years ago I was in hospital for about 10 days. And during that time there was 2 consultants that were working on the case. They didn't know what was wrong with me, but there was lots of tests going on. So I remember the first consultant came and she sat here. And she said, "My name, Margaret. We don't know what is wrong with you. We know that you've got really massive legs." I had thin body and, blown up legs. He said, "Obviously we know that, and we're taking lots of tests. But what I would like to do, if you don't mind, is to keep you in hospital, and we do as many tests as we can do. Because if you go back out to being an outpatient, it becomes a longer process. So is that okay with you?" And I said, yeah, I'm happy to do it. And so that was fine. She sent for tests. And then obviously she went off and another consultant came on, completely different. So they probably the same level of qualification, but this other was very abrupt, didn't even hardly talk to me, was very upset, standing at the end of the bed, very upset because one of the house officers hadn't put something in the notes. So she was having a barmy at the end. I thought, isn't this interesting? Same level of qualification, but the approach so different, so different. So which one are you going to warm to? But even that, it's more about what's my response to it. I just found it interesting because I'm in this study, so I'm interested that there's such a difference. So, respect for others is only going to come out really when you respect yourself, that true self, not the consultant, not respecting myself as the consultant, but respecting myself as that being that wants to help people, wants to be engaged in helping humanity in some way. Because even in those situations, it can either be that you're there because you want to bring benefit, or it could be a status, right? And that's going to really determine how you engage with that and the patients. It's the same in teaching. You can either be teacher-focused, and you'll teach in a certain way, or you could be student-focused. You're going to teach in a completely different way. So what we're studying here is being focused. And then that's what's going to come out. If we become role-focused, which is the default, something different is going to come out. So my next area that I was thinking about in this topic is about our own uniqueness. And I think we can build up trust on our own uniqueness. Sometimes in language we call it speciality here, but each one is unique. Doubt often comes when we're comparing ourselves, even with ourselves or with others. And then doubt kicks in. We see someone doing something really well, and I think, I can't do that. I was in a meeting last night, and one of those on the call is very, very experienced in a certain area. And I know that I've got to step up a bit to, not to meet that, but I have to engage in the whole thing in a little bit of a different way, not more than what I was used to. So at the end of the call, I could see that I wanted to, there was part of me that was moving into doubt. Oh, I'm not good enough. It's so easy for it to come, and I thought, no, don't go there. You've got to talk tomorrow night on, self-trust. So I just had that thought, it will be fine. There's so many challenges all of us have already surpassed in life. And probably the biggest challenge for us was learning to walk. Got up, fell down, got up, fell down, got up, fell down. So we know that it's not always going to be about success on the outside. Sometimes something might go horribly wrong on the outside, but you get such a good insight about yourself, or you learn something, or, so much of my own learning has come from mistakes. So I think it's, but there can be quite a lot of fear and doubt about making a mistake. And that might stop us taking a certain risk. I'm not saying uncalculated risk, not rash. But sometimes we won't engage in something or won't do something because we think the pain of failure or the thought about the pain of failure might stop us doing it. But unless we push ourselves a little bit, and life will present, in this game of life, you will be presented with situations that you think are beyond your capacity. And you need those. And you may feel, I don't know if I'll be able to manage, I don't know if I'll be able to cope, I don't know. And all those kind of weak thoughts will arise. And that's the moment when you just say, it will be fine. And what I've noticed is if you take that step, something will happen. Maybe someone comes and helps you, or you get an idea that you didn't think about, or something will happen. And ultimately, even if you mess up, you will still learn something that will help you the next time. I remember there was one time when I was working as a temporary secretary. I remember two situations really. And this one, I just went there once a week. I think it was every Monday I went to this place, and it was a drama school actually, speech and drama school in London. And so I just did any of the work that came in. So one day there was pieces of work, and all of them said urgent on them. But some of them had big red, urgent, and some had like little blue, urgent. And so I thought, is the big red one more urgent than the little? So I went to the line manager, and I said, I'm not sure which one to do. I'm not sure which one to do first, because they all say urgent on them. Could you advise me? And because I was only there for a day, and she said, oh yeah, do this one first, because she complains the most. Right? That was her answer. So I thought, okay. So she also said, you will need to leave at 5 today, because they're going to come and do something in the office. I said, oh yeah, that's no problem. So my time was 9 to 5. So I thought, that's great. So I started doing the first bit of work, and really made it really nice. And then the second bit of work, I suddenly realized that was the more important bit, and I hadn't left myself enough time. So I was like, oh no. And so I started working on it, but it was in my head, I've got to leave at 5 because they're coming into the office to do something. So there was suddenly a point about 20 to 5 that I went into kind of breakdown. And I thought, what do I do? What do I do? And so I wrote a note on it saying, I'm really sorry that I I did the first part and I didn't realise the second part was really important. I'm really sorry about it. And then I left it. And I walked out of that place and I was feeling really heavy. Like I'd made this, big blunder. And then as I was walking along the street, suddenly this thought came. You're allowed to make mistakes in life. It was at that point I realised how much I'd been covering up the mistakes. Working extra hours, no pay, this, that, doing this, just so you didn't make a mistake. And I can link it back to school or childhood, whatever. You can probably find a place where you consciously know when it would begin, but it may begin long, long time ago. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm allowed to make a mistake. And suddenly, it's almost like it dropped away and this joy came out. And it was almost like I was skipping along the road, metaphorically. I was skipping along the road and I suddenly thought, wow, I didn't realise what I'd done to myself. If I hadn't made that blunder, I may not have released that. So, in this game, the way I am, the uniqueness of me and what I can bring to this world is going to be different from you. But it's not so much about what we do, it's about that the mixture. Maybe all of us have a unique mixture of peace, love and happiness. That combination is unique for all of us. That's the uniqueness about us. It's not you're uniquely looking or you do something unique. It's more about that combination is unique that you can offer. So that's a really big topic, and doubts predominantly come when we're in some kind of comparison with either ourselves. I used to be good at this, I'm not now, I can't do this now. Or with other people. We look at other people and that creates doubts in ourselves. Or we look at, way that culture presents something and we compare ourselves with that and we think we're not good enough. But we're all good enough. It's just the good enough is the good has to come out and then it's enough, right? The good enough is the good coming out is completely enough. But we've made good enough about the external. So if you're in a situation, and it might be adverse, and you stay calm and peaceful while the situation's going on and sorts itself out, to me that would be big, big success. But the old paradigm is we want to sort out all the outside things at the expense of not sorting out the inside things. So the next area that I'm quite interested in this whole self-trust, is that you have to be sincere with yourself. We're taught to be sincere with others, but how sincere am I with myself? Am I happy with myself and how I'm conducting myself? Because otherwise, if we've got sort of our own level of, I'm not saying put yourself up there and you can't ever reach it, but I think the way that we're operating, we have to be content with that. We have to feel aligned with it. Otherwise, the low self-esteem will kick in quite quickly. It'll be like I'm sabotaging. If I'm continually sabotaging myself, the low self-esteem will kick in a lot. So we have to conduct ourselves in a way that maybe it goes back to that respect for the self, we're conducting ourselves in a way that we're happy with ourselves. So if I'm going around blaming people for my experience and complaining, I'm not going to be happy with myself. But if I'm kind of making some effort to, hang on, what is going on in me that's disturbing me? as soon as I come back inside and start sorting out myself, rather than wanting other people to change, or as soon as I make that effort, you'll start to feel good about yourself. It's quite incredible how quickly it can change. While your focus is out there, wanting that to be all sorted, low self-esteem will jump up and down. The ego will either go to, the low self-esteem that we all know, low self-doubt, not feeling good, not good enough, or the low self-esteem masks as arrogance. It's all low self-esteem. Someone who's arrogant has got low self-esteem. It's just they're masking it. It's another coping mechanism. So, when we can actually be sincere in our approach to ourselves, if I make a mistake, I say the wrong thing, let me check myself. It's not about them. Let me check myself. What was going on that my tone of voice was like that, or I got abrupt, or I wasn't generous, or, So, and as soon as that journey's going on, actually, the fact that you're looking at yourself and wanting to bring self-change will increase your self-trust about yourself. While your focus is out there, you're totally vulnerable to what's going on out there, and that will ultimately bring with it a low self-esteem and self-doubt. So just this journey of self-reflection, looking inwards, see myself a bit differently, will really help build that self-trust. And I'm not saying this is easy work, but so the other area, I think, is that we have to be able to see both. We have to see our strengths and we have to see our weaknesses. So, and not to get too upset about the weaknesses. So, there was someone giving a talk the other day, and I just thought they shared it so brilliantly. They said they are aware of their kind of areas where they need to improve. That's how they said it. Areas where they need to improve. But that's not where their focus is. They're aware of it. They know it. But their focus is on empowering themselves. They focus on what they would like to be and work with that, even though they know the other is there. So they're not disillusioned or in any illusion, but they put their energy into change rather than their energy into the gap. So rather than, because what is low self-esteem and doubt? It's only that there's a gap between the truth about myself and what I think I am. So they fill the gap. They're filling that gap with empowerment rather than making more of a gap by thinking about it. So you have to know your areas of vulnerability, your areas where you can go into low self-esteem. But the aim is to empower yourself. And there's so many situations where there was a doubt. A situation comes up and I think, will I be able to manage? Will I be able to do this? And I had to override it and say, you have to do it anyway. It's a bit like that book, isn't it? Feel the fear, do it anyway. I can't remember the content of the book, I just remember the title. But it's like that, the fear will come up, but just keep going. And my real belief is that life will present you with opportunities to actually empower yourself if you take them. So you could say that this talk is an opportunity to empower yourself. Yeah? So you can put yourself in situations or listen to things or do things that empower you, you can also go into your default and do things that disempower you. You know? And we've all got our coping mechanisms for when we don't feel good. You know, we numb ourselves. And so the last thing that I wanted to talk about is tolerance power, because we often think tolerance power is about able to tolerate others, and maybe a tiny bit of it is. But ultimately, the tolerance power is being able to tolerate myself in those situations. Yeah? So here's someone who's, whatever, they're complaining, or they might even be aggressive or disrespectful or whatever. So in worldly terms, we think tolerance is being able to manage that. It's not. Tolerance is, can I stay peaceful inside while all that's going on? And if I'm not peaceful, can I manage the feelings that are coming out without projecting it back out? This is tolerance. You know, we use this image of a child throwing stones at the tree. This tree will still give fruit. So what we're learning here is there's got to be a one-way flow of peace, love, happiness, independent of what's going on there. So it might be someone's been aggressive, I stay calm. Someone's insulting, I don't lose my respect for the being. The behavior is a different thing, but the being, I stay respectful to that. And I've seen so much change in relationships by staying respectful to the being, even though the behavior was not so good. It might take time, but the same one that's been disrespectful to you, if you stay respectful, it might take a bit of time, but a few years later, the whole thing will shift. There was one time I was in a meeting, and someone said something a bit odd. I couldn't really understand what they were saying. And they left the meeting, and everyone else left, and there was one other person I know really well, and I said, I didn't really understand what they said by that. And the person said, don't you get it? They hate you. I was like, no one's... They really dislike you intensely. I was like, oh my gosh. I had never heard someone say that, you know. And I thought about it afterwards. I thought, well, I've got to be around that person quite a lot. And that, you know... And so I kind of made a decision at that point. Two things I made a decision about. One was I didn't know what bit of me they didn't like, so what to do. But the other thing that suddenly became clear to me, is there anyone in my life that I'm disliking? Because you only get back what you're putting out, right? So I started looking at, was there anyone I was holding any feeling? It might not be as strong as dislike, but is there anyone who was bugging me, or I used to get irritated with them, or anything like that? So I started clearing up my own act. Get your own house in order. So I didn't really know, I had to be around this other being quite a bit. So I did my best to not overly engage or whatever, but most of my effort was on getting my own house in order, checking out, was there anybody else that and I thought, yeah, there's a few people that I maybe get a bit with. So I started to sort that out. And the relationship with this person, the other person, without me doing anything, over time really changed. This person became almost the opposite. Opposite would do anything for me. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. So, you know, whatever comes to us in life, it's like a lesson or a chance to heal yourself, to get yourself in order. So it's almost time, and I haven't really, left much time for questions, but we could have one and two if anyone has any. So actually I took the word trust, and T, truth, you have to have respect, self-respect. Your own uniqueness, your own unique contribution to this world, it's going to be completely different from others. Your combination of goodness is going to be different. And then S, be sincere in your efforts of life. Be sincere in your own self-change. And T, tolerate your own discomfort. Once that emotional charge goes out, then you respond to the situation. But not while there's emotional charge, or you'll be heading for a disaster. Yeah. So I think the mic's coming if anyone's got a question. Someone here's got a question.
Thank you. Thank you, that was lovely. 4 very quick things. First is I love words and the interplay of words, and I gave my son a large chunk of money about 7 or 8 years ago to buy his first home, and on the way over there, on the day we completed it, he said, shouldn't we be putting this money in some sort of trust? And I thought about it for a moment and said, well, do you know under what circumstances you put things in a trust? He said, no. I said, when you don't trust someone. And he jumped up and down and said, and you trust me? Mm. It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
But it's funny how the word sort of works in both ways, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The second is about 25 years ago, I moved house and changed gyms, and was working out, and there was a guy, I'd been there about a few weeks, and the guy was clearly admiring me for the sweat I'd done in the previous hour. And to make him feel better, at some point I said to him, I couldn't lift those weights. And he said to me, I've only known you 3 weeks, but I think you could do anything you put your mind to. Mm. It was only a couple of hours later when I thought on it that I realised that applies to anybody. It's really lovely. Mm. And then 2 quick things from, I think your colleague Caroline Ward said them. First is, don't get angry with people who are angry. Because you're fighting, anger with anger. Doesn't work, does it? And also she said, and I always breathe this in when I think about it, she said, who I really am is more than sufficient. I just wish I could be who I am more often.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for those. Because that's it, isn't it, ultimately? You've got anger that's weak. We think anger's strong, but it's actually weak. So in that game, weak with weak. So that's the game you're in. How much can you have empowered thoughts against your weak thoughts? And the empowered thoughts is anything that's related to the core qualities. Anything that's related to the core qualities is empowered thoughts. And also on another level, any thought that's connecting you with something higher is going to empower you. Higher thought, divine thought, elevated thinking. This is what's going to empower you against the weak. So no one's ever bad, they're just weak. And weak, the result of weakness, you can do terrible things because you're weak. But when you're empowered, you start to do the opposite. So, it's time for a little meditation. So we take a little bit of time to go inside and go to that center point. You can see it as that center point where the mind springs from. We are all beings having a human experience. And the true state of being is peace, is a natural love and joy. This is the true state of each one, but it's been covered up, forgotten, put aside, buried, disused. And now we're bringing it forth. We're uncovering. We're making it known. We're experiencing the truth about ourselves. A being of peace. A being who has natural, pure love. A being that is happy. All that happened is that it got hidden away. But now we're empowering it. We're in the game of empowerment. We're bringing it forth. We're making the choices. We're having the right thoughts. We no longer blame anyone. We look deep inside the self. We go back to our innocence, our purity. We find the jewel in the self. And we bring the expression of it into our life. The situations will come, the situations will go. But we are learning to respond from inside, independent of the outside. A one-way flow of goodness. This is our truth. And we're learning to trust that truth. Feel the energy in the room as we sit in our truth. Together, we are creating a better world.